Okay, so we are going to take a look at how to install Ubuntu 14.04 Trusty in VirtualBox. And we're going to assume right now that you have already installed VirtualBox. You should have an icon on your desktop that says VirtualBox Manager that you can click on, which will bring up this nice little screen right here. And we're also going to assume that you have downloaded the Ubuntu 14.04 ISO. And both of those things you can find out how to do very easily on the Google. So now that you've got the ISO, you've got the VirtualBox Manager up here, we are going to create a new virtual machine. You can name it, we're just going to call it Ubuntu, and VirtualBox is pretty cool in that it will automatically select your type and your version when you type in the name here. I like to give it 2 gigabytes, but it really depends on what you have available for your system. And I am going to create a new virtual hard disk. So once we have these pieces of information set, we can go ahead and click create. We're going to avoid guided mode. And this is the part where we are going to specify some parameters for the virtual hard drive. And this is going to be something that is going to store your entire virtual machine. And if you want to move your virtual machine from machine to machine, you're going to be moving this virtual hard drive. VDI is the file type that we are going to use. It's the native VirtualBox disk image, but there are lots of different kinds of virtual disk images. And so you can use different ones if you want. We're going to use the VirtualBox one since we're just going to use this in VirtualBox. You can also select whether you want a dynamically allocated or a fixed size hard drive. Dynamically allocated means that when you set the size of the hard drive, it will not use the space unless it needs to. So if you only have 4 gigabytes of data in this disk image, so you download a bunch of files into the virtual machine and they start to consume space, it's only going to consume the amount of space for the data that you have in it. And so it will grow over time as you add more data to the image. Fixed size means that it's going to consume all of the space from the point that you create it. So if we create an 8 gigabytes image, it's going to consume 8 gigabytes on our hard drive from the very start. If we create a dynamically sized 8 gigabyte image, it'll probably start with maybe 4 gigabytes. And as we add more information to the disk image, that file size will increase up to the 8 gigabytes. And there are ways of adjusting the sizes and doing other things after you've created it, but it's kind of a headache. So if you can afford to give it a little bit more space, try to give yourself a buffer depending on how much you're going to need. So we're going to make this one, I don't know, let's make it like 15.20 because I'm lazy. Not going to change that. We're going to make it dynamically allocated, and then we are just going to hit create. Another thing that I will mention is that the fixed disks do tend to perform a little bit better because it already has all of the space allocated for them. So now we have this new image here called Ubuntu, and we're going to start it up. So we click start, but it's kind of like an empty computer right now. It doesn't have an operating system, and so we need to install an operating system on that. And this is where the Ubuntu ISO is going to come into play. If you don't have it pre-selected, you can click on this option and you can go to the file location. So we have 14.04 here. This is the 64-bit version. So now we have selected the ISO, and we're telling VirtualBox that we want to install Ubuntu on this fresh, clean computer that we have created. So it's going to bring up the usual startup that you would see if you were to put this ISO on a actual computer. This is the Ubuntu ISO image right now. So this process right here is pretty much exactly the same that it would be if we were installing Ubuntu on a regular laptop or a desktop. We just happen to be doing it inside of a VirtualBox virtual machine. So we can try Ubuntu, we can run it from the ISO, or we can install Ubuntu. We are going to install Ubuntu here. And we have some options that we can select. We can have it download updates, install some third-party software. We have met all the installation requirements here. We're just going to hit continue to move right along. We can do some things at this point. We can encrypt the hard drive. We can set up logical volume management. I'm going to ignore all of that. We're just going to do a plain vanilla installation here. And this is where it's telling us that it's going to be creating these different partitions. Usually you can set these up yourself, but I think Ubuntu does a fine job of selecting what we need. So we're just going to go with that. New York, sure. Why not? You can select where you are. You select your keyboard layout. And now we can define some parameters for the machine. So I'm just going to say my name is MrPowerScripts. Hey. And this is MrPowerScripts VirtualBox. Username will be MrPowerScripts. We'll just, can I leave out a password? I can't. Okay. So we'll put in a little password here. Tells you if it's good or not. You can encrypt your home folder if you want. Require a password to log in. We're just going to leave all that the way it is. And here's the part that I'm probably going to speed up in the video. Okay, our installation is complete. So now we are going to restart the virtual machine, and we're going to load the operating system from the virtual hard drive, because right now we are still viewing Ubuntu from the ISO image. So let's go ahead and click reboot. It's going to run through the shutdown process here. All right, so now we are actually booting Ubuntu from the virtual hard drive. So it's going to take a moment here to get started. And you'll notice that the screen is incredibly small. And even if I resize it, it stays the same size. So how do we fix that? We have this nice Ubuntu installation, but it's a little bit too small for us. So after you install an operating system, what you want to do is come up to Device, and you want to insert the Guest Editions CD image. Guest Editions is a software package developed by or developed for VirtualBox to make operating systems play more nicely within VirtualBox. So you'll see here, it says, do you want it to be automatically started? We just want to run it. So we're going to run it. It's going to ask us for the administrative password, which is just the same password that we created for our user account. And I'm going to click Authenticate. So now it's going to go through the installation procedure for the VirtualBox Guest Editions. And it's going to take a little bit here, so probably fast forward this part too. Okay, so now it's finished installing the Guest Editions, and we can press Return to close this window. And now we need to restart Ubuntu. So we can just do that from inside Ubuntu. Go to Shutdown and Restart. And we're going to go through the boot procedure once again. And now we have the Guest Editions installed. So what you'll notice here is that as I resize the window, Ubuntu will resize with it. So the Guest Editions help improve our quality of life as we use Ubuntu. Let's log in here. And it's going to take a moment for everything to go. But now we have a working installation of Ubuntu running here on our Windows box. And we can do everything that we would normally do. We can access the terminal. See, there's a little bit of a delay. It's all here. So that is how you install it. You can do other things with the virtual machine. What I like to do is after I install it, I'll come in here to advanced and I will enable bidirectional clipboard, bidirectional drag and drop. I don't think the drag and drop feature works for Ubuntu, but you can adjust other elements here. You actually have to turn the virtual machine off, but you can give it more video memory. You can give it more controllers to have more ISO images if you want. You can adjust the network. You can give it a bridge adapter. Sometimes that comes in handy. If you want to have your own IP address, you would give it a bridged adapter, and then the virtual machine will have its own unique IP address on the network. You can give it more processors. There's some other things here that you would want to read a little bit about before you go start changing, but this is the basics of it. This is Ubuntu running in VirtualBox. Doesn't take a whole lot to get there. So that's it. Thanks for watching.